Magic Johnson and Larry Bird, two players who are part of the greatest individual rivalry in the history of sports. And throughout the 1980s, the question was always asked, who is better, Magic Johnson or Larry Bird? And today, that is the question we'll be answering. And to do that, I've created what I like to call the Legend Evaluating Grid. You can call it the LEG for short. And it's a grid that takes in every aspect of basketball, every skill, every intangible, and it assigns each skill a proper number on how important that aspect is in the game of basketball. And these 7 categories, they will include scoring, defense, passing, rebounding, clutchness, shooting and efficiency, and last but not least, IQ, intangibles, and leadership, all combined in one category. Now, all 7 of those categories, they are assigned a place value number on how important they are to the game of basketball. Scoring will be worth 20 points, defense will be worth 17 points, passing will be worth 15 points, clutch will also be worth 15, rebounding will be worth 10, shooting and efficiency, that'll be worth 10 also. And the last category, the miscellaneous category, IQ, intangibles, and leadership, that will be combined 13.5 points. So the first category is scoring, and to me that is the most important aspect of basketball and the most important skill a player can possess. And when looking at Larry Bird, he's a career 24.3 points per game scorer. That is the 17th highest all time. The highest he ever averaged in a season was 29.9, and he only had 2 seasons ever averaging under 20 points per game, and one of those seasons he only played 6 games due to injury. And when it came to scoring in the playoffs, Larry Bird did not have a significant drop-off. He averaged 23.8 points per game in the NBA playoffs and 23.1 in the NBA Finals. So Larry Bird, he was always in that 23 to 24 point per game range. And when you look at Larry Bird's ability to score, he could give it to you inside or out. He had a deadly 3-point shot. He was a great mid-range shooter, as well as an underrated bank shot artist. And I think everyone's heard the stories about how good Larry Bird was with his left hand. So when it came to scoring the basketball, Larry Bird was definitely up there as one of the best scorers in NBA history. So for this category, I gave Larry Bird an 18 out of 20. And when you say the name Magic Johnson, you don't think of scoring right off the bat, but Magic, he was always a great consistent scorer. He averaged 19.5 points per game for his career in the playoffs and the regular season. And when it came to the NBA Finals, Magic Johnson averaged 19.4 points per game. So Magic, he was always in that high 19 to 20 point per game range. And when you look at his ability to score the basketball, he wasn't nearly as talented at scoring as Larry Bird was, but Magic, he did have a pretty good post game where he could back you down, and being a 6'9" point guard, that did play to his advantage when it came to scoring the basketball. But I mean, Larry Bird, he's just flat out a better scorer than Magic. And for this category, I give Magic 15 out of 20. And the next category we'll take a look at is defense. And defense for both these players, it wasn't their strong suit. And Magic Johnson, I think he was an average defender at best. I wouldn't say he's a great tremendous on-ball or off-ball defender, but he was a very smart defender, and he knew how to get in the passing lanes and create steals and just create havoc. But I think at the best, I think Magic is an average defender. So I give Magic 11 out of 17. Now, Larry Bird, on the other hand, he wasn't fast, couldn't jump high, but I think Bird, he was still a pretty good above average defender, and he definitely was better than Magic, and he actually made 3 all-defensive teams in the mid-80s when he was at his absolute peak. And I'll talk about later how Larry Bird is high IQ. It allowed him to do things on the basketball court that physically he shouldn't have been able to do. And that's really apparent when you look at Larry Bird's defense. He knew how to read the passing lanes, how to disrupt teams' offenses, and how to call out other teams' sets. So Larry Bird, I think he is a better defender than Magic, and I gave Larry Bird 13 out of 17 for this category. Now, next up we have passing. And I'll tell you off the bat, Magic Johnson, he's the greatest passer in NBA history. And I mean, you can look at the stats all you want. He's a career 11.2 assists per game guy. He averaged over 10 assists 9 times, and he led the NBA in assists 4 times. But I mean, the numbers for Magic's passing, they don't really do it justice. And you could probably have a 20-minute highlight reel of just Magic Johnson passing the ball. So for this category, I give Magic 15 out of 15, and that is a perfect score. Now, everyone knows how good a passer Magic is, but I don't think everyone quite knows how good a passer Larry Bird was. And when you look at his career averages, he's a 6.3 assists per game guy. And I mean, that's really good for a small forward, but it's not really something that catches your eye and makes you think Larry Bird, he was some otherworldly passer. But if you listen to the way his teammates talked about him, if you watch the game film, watch the highlights, Larry Bird, his passing was off the charts. It wasn't as good as Magic's passing in my opinion, but he did have very similar traits to Magic when it came to passing the ball. He was able to read plays before they happened, find players in the backdoor cuts, throw extremely difficult no-look passes, and I think this is probably the most underrated aspect of Larry Bird's game, and I give him a 14 out of 15 on passing. And next up we have rebounding, and rebounding for individual skill, I do think it is important, but I think in general, rebounding can be overrated. And for Larry Bird's career, he averaged 10 rebounds a game, which is very impressive considering the era he played in, where there was a lot of big men dominating the boards. And for someone like Larry Bird to average 10 rebounds a game while playing with Kevin McHale and Robert Parrish, that is super impressive. So for this category, I give Larry Bird an 8.5 out of 10. Now Magic, he averages 7.2 rebounds for his career, and I think for the guard position, I think it's a very good number. And for Magic being 6'9", you could argue that's a little less than you'd expect, but usually Magic, his job, it wasn't to get the boards, it was to catch the outlet pass from Kareem or someone like AC Green or Kurt Rambis and start the fast break. So Magic's rebounding numbers, they might be a little deflated considering the role he played in that Lakers offense, but I still give Magic a 7 out of 10 when it comes to rebounding. So the next category we have is efficiency and shooting, and Larry Bird, he definitely dominates his category. He was the founder of the 50-40-90 club, that is shooting 50% from the field, 40% from 3, and 90% from the line. That is the definition of efficiency, and Larry Bird, he was doing that while shooting at a high volume, so that is extremely impressive. And Bird's splits for his career, it is 50% from the field, 38% from 3, and 89% from the line. So Bird, he almost averaged 50-40-90 splits for his entire career. So in the efficiency category, I give Larry Bird a 9.5 out of 10. And just because Bird dominates his category, that doesn't mean Magic was some inefficient player who is just jacking up shots, shooting 40% from the field. I mean, Magic is still a pretty good shooter for his career, shooting 52%. And I mean, you can look at all the advanced numbers, and Magic, he didn't take many threes, so that field goal percentage is definitely a little bit inflated. And when you watch Magic's game, it's mostly layups or floaters or shots inside the three-point line. And Magic, very similar to Larry Bird, he was a very, very good free throw shooter. He actually led the NBA in free throw percentage one time. So Magic, he was definitely an elite free throw shooter, and he developed that skill as his career progressed. But at the end of the day, Magic, he is still not as good a shooter as Larry Bird, so I give Magic a 7.5 out of 10 in the shooting and efficiency category. And the next category I have up is the miscellaneous category, and that includes IQ, leadership, and intangibles. And these are things you really can't measure, and you have to look at how Magic Johnson and Larry Bird's teammates, how they talk about these players. And both these players' former teammates, they go on and on about how great of teammates, how great of leaders they were, how they had some of the highest basketball IQs of all time. And as I said before, you really can't measure things like IQ, intangibles, or leadership. You just have to take people's word for it, former teammates. So for this category, I give Magic a perfect 13 out of 13, and I gave Larry Bird, I give him a slightly less 12.5 out of 13. And last but not least, we have the clutch category. And this category is worth 15 points, and it is very important for a basketball player's skill set to be clutch. And when talking about clutch gene and clutch shot making, there's not many better players than one Larry Bird. Now, the clutch stats, they don't go back far enough to the 1980s, but when looking at Larry Bird's performances in Game 7s, he averages 27.9 points per game, 9.2 rebounds, 6.6 assists. He shoots 44% from the field, 28% from 3, and 93% from the line. So in Game 7s, I would say Larry Bird, he definitely steps up and rises to the occasion. And you also have to take into account, Larry Bird, he was never afraid to miss the big shot. He was always looking to get the ball in the clutch. And more times than not, Larry Bird, he would come through for the Boston Celtics. And you can find some great stories on YouTube of the absolute fear he gave opponents when he had the ball with the clock running down. So for the clutch category, I gave Larry Bird 14.5 out of 15. And Magic Johnson, who's also a very good player in the clutch, and I gave you Larry Bird's Game 7 stats, so here's Magic Johnson, his career Game 7 stats. He averaged 20.5 points per game, 14 assists, 7 rebounds, shot 54.7% from the field, 88.9% from the line, and 0% from 3. He only attempted one 3-pointer in any Game 7 he played in, so take that for what it's worth. So Magic in Game 7s, I think he definitely performed well, but the thing that holds Magic back from being on the upper echelon of clutch players is the fact that he choked away the 1984 finals by dribbling off the clock not once, but twice. And he also missed 2 crucial free throws that the Lakers desperately needed in a game they lost to the Celtics. And that 1984 choke job by Magic, that would fuel him to come back and be even more determined in the 1987 finals. And in that finals, Magic had a shot that was more iconic than any shot Larry Bird ever made in his career. And that was the junior hook shot over Robert Parrish and Kevin McHale. And the last thing I want to talk about when discussing Magic's clutch gene is the 1980 finals. And in this finals in Game 5, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, he would go down with a severe ankle injury, and he would not be able to play in Game 6 in Philadelphia. And with Kareem going out, the 76ers were heavy favorites, but Magic Johnson, he stepped up as a rookie and started at center in place of Kareem and had 42 points, 15 rebounds, and 7 assists, and led the Lakers to the NBA title. And Magic himself, he says that is the greatest game they ever played, and as a rookie to do that, that is extremely clutch, and that is arguably the best NBA Finals game of all time. So Magic, he was undoubtedly a very clutch player, and for this category, I give him 12.5 out of 15. And that clutch category, that was our last category, so let's total up and see who actually was better, Magic Johnson or Larry Bird. And when you add up all 7 categories, Larry Bird comes out with 90 of 100 possible points. And Magic Johnson, he comes in with 81 of 100 possible points. So in my opinion, I think Larry Bird, I think he was the better basketball player when evaluating their individual talent and their individual skill. I think both these players, they are tremendously great players, and I think that 90 to 81 score, that could be a little deceiving. But when you look at the leg and actually understand that Magic Johnson, he was only a couple of points behind Larry Bird on most of the categories, it is actually much closer than it appears. But at the end of the day, I think Larry Bird, I think he was the better individual basketball player. And to end this video, I just gotta say, Larry Bird and Magic Johnson, I think people need to understand these two guys, they saved the NBA, and the NBA wouldn't be what we know today if it wasn't for these two guys. Their rivalry, it single-handedly revived the NBA. It got NBA Finals off tape delay. It made people across the country actually want to watch basketball, and that was mainly due to Larry Bird and Magic Johnson, their head-to-head individual rivalry. So, thank you guys for watching this video. Let me know in the comments who you think is better. Is Magic actually better than Bird? Did I overrate Larry Bird on some things? Did I undersell or underrate Magic on other things? Let me know in the comments. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask me. But besides that, thank you guys for watching. I'll see you guys next time.